In this video, I wish to explore in brief the similarities and differences between Gnosticism and Hermeticism. It is not my intention to provide a definite answer or definition of either. This video is not intended to be an all or end-all exploration of these ancient esoteric cults. It is my intention, however, to explore these ideas in the hope to provide a better understanding of Gnosticism and Hermeticism for the purpose of achieving more insight into our current woke cultures. There is no one right way or path to knowledge. What is Gnosis? A group of ancient heresies stressing escape from this world through the acquisition of knowledge. A thought and practice of any various cults of late Christian and early Christian centuries declared heretical and distinguished chiefly by pretension to mystic and esoteric religious insights, by emphasis on knowledge rather than faith, and by the conviction that matter is evil. Thought and practice is similar to Marx's philosophy of praxis and Giovanni Gentili's philosophy of actualism, as well as Benito Mussolini. What is Hermeticism? The body of ideas set forth in Hermetic writings, adherence to the idea expressed in Hermetic writings, the occult sciences, especially alchemy. Hermeticism is a system of ideas based on Hermetic teachings, adherence to the practice or praxis of Hermetic doctrine. It is not willful if the message of their art is veiled and indirect. R.G. Goldwater. In other words, Hermeticism is by definition synchronistic. It is often regarded as self-evident that Western culture is based on the twin pillars of Greek rationality on the one hand and biblical faith on the other. Certainly, there can be little doubt that these two traditions have been dominant forces in cultural development. The former may be defined by its sole reliance on the rationality of the mind, the latter by its emphasis on the authoritative divine revelation. However, from the first centuries to the present day, there has always existed a third current, characterized by resistance to the dominance of either pure rationality or doctrinal faith. The adherents of this tradition emphasize the importance of inner enlightenment, or gnosis, a revelatory experience that mostly entailed an encounter with one's true self as well as with the ground of being, God. In antiquity, this perspective was represented by Gnostics and Hermeticists, in the Middle Ages by several Christian sects. The Cathars can, at least to a certain extent, be considered part of the same spiritual tradition. Starting with the Italian Renaissance of the late 15th century, the newly discovered Hermetic philosophy rapidly spread all over Europe. It found many adherents, in particular during the 16th and the first half of the 17th century. The so-called Hermeticist tradition and its later developments, to the whole of which may refer to as Western esotericism, was characterized by an organic view of the world that assumed a strong internal coherence of the whole universe, including an intimate relationship between both its spiritual and its material elements. Plotinus makes it completely clear that Gnosticism is something quite different from philosophy. His Gnostics were interested in philosophy, but they proved themselves to be charlatans since their claims were not based on solid philosophical reasoning. He wrote indignantly, "If they wished to disagree on these points, there was no unfair hostility in saying to them that they should not recommend their own opinions to their audience by ridiculing and insulting the Greeks, but that they should show the correctness on their own merits of all the points of doctrine which are peculiar to them and differ from the views of the Greeks, stating their real opinions courteously as benefit philosophers and fairly on the points where they are opposed, looking to the truth and not hunting fame by censoring men who have been judged good from the ancient times by men of worth, saying that they themselves are better than the Greeks." With respect to the numerous hypostates introduced by the Gnostics on the basis of their revelations, Plotinus observed with some bitterness in the same section. "And by giving names to a multitude of intelligible realities, they think they will appear to have discovered the exact truth, though by this very multiplicity they bring the intelligible nature into the likeness of the sense world, the inferior world." Exactly like dealing with the wokies and wokeism. They just make fun of you. In summary, I think the best definition of Gnosis is by Theodotus. Gnosis is the knowledge of who we are and what we have become, where we were and into what we have been thrown, whither we hasten and from what we are redeemed, what is birth and rebirth. Now let's look at creation myths, a comparison. Gnostic creation myth, a tragic cosmic accident. The world was created by accident. An evil being called the demiurge created the world. God existed in the fullness called the pleroma, heaven in other words. Anything that happened there, it happens for real. God at first thought that the split into two forms, male and logos and female Sophia, wisdom, philosophy. She wanted to create, which was considered a sin. Because she thought it in the pleroma, therefore it manifested itself into the creator, that which was evil, which is the birth of sin, i.e. the demiurge. He caused the material world that trapped or imprisoned man, soul in Gnos. The demiurge works to keep him trapped there. This makes man a stranger in a strange land, in other words, an alien. Now, the Hermetic creation myth, which uses Gnosis, it is the opposite because it does not think everything is evil. It barely touched upon the mythological. It is not about escapism. It is more to do with transcending. A world we must transcend. The dialectic is about the removal of opposites. They are the same in kind but different in degrees. The dialectic is hermetic. Its goal is to bring everything back to oneness, with no distinctions. It uses the dialectic to obliterate all opposition. Oppositions are to be obliterated. God creates the elements after seeing the cosmos, and created one just like it, our cosmos, from its own constituent elements and souls. From there, God, being both male and female, holding the world, gave birth to a second Gnos, creator of the world. This second Gnos created 7 powers, often seen as Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the Sun, and the Moon, to travel in circles and govern destiny. The world then leaps forth from the materializing elements, which made them unintelligent. Gnos then made the governed spin, and from their matter sprang forth creatures without speech. Earth then was separated from water, and the animals, other than man, were brought forth from the earth. The supreme Gnos then created man, hermaphroditic in his own image, and handed over his creation. Man carefully observed the creation of his brother, the lesser Gnos, and received his and his father's authority over it all. Man then rose up above the spheres, paths to a better view, the creation, and then showed the form of God of nature. So then nature fell in love with it, and man, and seeing a similar form to his own, reflecting in the water, fell in love with nature, and wished to dwell in it. Immediately man became one with nature, and became a slave to its limitations, such as gender and sleep. Man thus became speechless, for it lost the word, and became double, being mortal in body, but immortal in spirit, having authority of all, but subject to destiny. So in other words, it follows the laws of correspondence. Now we go on to the world, or cosmos. The world. For Gnosticists, the cosmos is the bad product of an evil creator. Our world is a result of a tragic split within the divine world, or even within the Godhead itself, since the pleroma is only the extension of the nature of God. According to several Gnostic systems, the first step in this downward development was the wish of Sophia to become equal to God by producing something on her own. However, since every thought in the divine world, even a sinful one, becomes independent entity, she brought forth a ghastly monster that eventually became the creator, the demiurge, who made the bad world of matter after the image of the spiritual realm, as a result of Sophia's insolence. The soul, which is of divine origin, became incarcerated in the body. The Gnostic view of the world is anti-cosmic. The material world was only devised to be the prison of the soul. Since Plato, it was usual to see the celestial bodies as divine living beings, visible gods, but the Gnostics considered the planets and the signs of the zodiac as evil powers, which the soul on its way back to its origin could pass only if it had true gnosis. Now we go to man. Man. This view of the material cosmos also determined the Gnostic understanding of man. The split in the divinity that initiated the birth of the demiurge and the making of the world finally also led to the creation of man. Man is a stranger in a hostile world. His soul, or divine spark in any case, his inner self, originally belonged to the divine world, but it got trapped in this material world, incarcerated in the body, enslaved to the passions. As a result, it completely forgot its divine origin. It can only be saved from its prison if it receives Gnosis. Against this background, the famous definition of Gnosis, once again by Theodotus, a 2nd century Christian Gnostic, becomes perfectly clear. Gnosis is the knowledge of who we are and what we have become, where we are and into what we have been thrown, whether we hasten or from what we are redeemed, what is birth and what is rebirth. The Hermetic way implied instruction in the nature of the cosmos and of man. In that process of instruction, use was made of all kinds of human knowledge, theories of space and movement, the science of astronomy and astrology, medicine, and also sometimes magical practices. But the purpose of all this was to make the world transparent toward God. The Hermetic way finally led to initiation in the divine mystery, to knowledge of God, to God himself as the source of being. With respect to the ultimate goal of their quest for knowledge, Gnosticists and Hermeticists have much in common. But as to the way to get there, they differ profoundly. So let's summarize the comparisons and differences of Gnosticism and Hermeticism. Gnosticism, divine spark, inner self enclosed in the body, the result of some tragic event. Hermeticism, not a negative world created by a demiurge. Cosmos is not bad. Gnosticism, God doesn't need man to know him. Hermeticism is the third or middle position between a Judaic-Christian concept of God. Gnosticism, the Apocrypha of John, a textbook, supplies answers to the basic questions like what is the origin of evil? How can we escape from this evil world to our own heavenly home? How? Through Gnosis, his inner self. Hermeticism, God requires creation in order to be God. God needs man to know him. The Gnosticistic texts in Gnosticism, the Apocrypha of John. Hermeticism is emphasis on the Gnos to know God. Its texts also include the Corpus Hermeticum, the Kabbalion, and the Emerald Tablet. Gnosticism is negative. Hermeticism, this is more to do about contemplation through reading the various texts. Gnosticism, the supreme God is inaccessible to the human mind. Hermeticism, it is to transcend the limitations of our earthly existence. Gnosticism is a philosophical language to describe God's transcendence. It does use mythological language to describe the divine world. Hermeticism is about to bring everything back to oneness. Final thoughts and my conclusion. The concept of Gnosis, the secret divine belief that you are the supreme, operates in both Hermetic and Gnosis. Hermetic is thin on the mythology, but Gnosis is all in on the mythology. Gnosticism presents itself as a philosophy and Hermeticism is not. However, they can take or synthesize different characteristics of either. Their view is the absolute negative view of it. The 7 principles of the Kabbalion is a Hermetic text that is meant to help you manage your life. It is a text that is meant to not understand, but to help you contemplate life and existence. The book can teach you how to live a better life through praxis. In other words, it is a source of philosophical inspiration and personal spiritual growth. The Hermetic text is meant to be a general and vague, kind of like astrology. There's something in it for everyone. The Hermetic mode of action is the dialectic. In Hegel's dialectics is a term used to describe a method of philosophical argument that involves some sort of contradictory process between opposing sides. In what is perhaps the most classic version of dialectics, the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, for instance, presented his philosophical argument as a back and forth dialogue or debate, generally between the character of Socrates on one side and some person or group of people to whom Socrates was taking his interlocutors on the other. In the course of the dialogues, Socrates' interlocutors proposed definitions of philosophical concepts or expressed views that Socrates challenges or opposes. So to conclude, therefore, according to Gnosis and Hermeticists, religions are all reflection of the one true religion, theirs. Humans can only ascend only when all of humanity ascends. How is this going to work if you don't all do it Hey, just like communism. If everyone that is still alive in a communist totalitarian state, then the whole system can work and will work. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed today's video.